All right, so we're diving into some seriously good stuff today, huh? Rizal's Noli Me Tangere. We're going deep into chapters 9 through 17. Should be
Oh,
intense.
yeah, definitely.
And from these excerpts, San Diego sounds idyllic on the surface, right? But something tells me you're going to show us there's way more to it.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
San Diego, it's like this microcosm, right? You see the festivals, the beautiful descriptions, but Rizal cleverly contrasts all that with these characters that are just, well, they're hints of trouble brewing.
Like, he's setting the stage for some serious drama. You've got Ibarra, back from Europe, full of ideas, wants to change things. But then there's Padre Damaso.
Padre Damaso.
Holding on to this grudge. Don't forget, Fray Cibola either seems like he's playing the long game, huh?
Definitely, definitely. And each one, it's like they represent a different piece of this power struggle going on in San Diego. It's fascinating.
It makes you wonder who actually has the power, right? Like, Capitan Tiago, he's got money, but he's always trying to please the friars.
Right.
So are the friars really the ones calling the shots?
That's a good question. You can't underestimate the church's influence in 19th century Philippines. It was the Spanish colonial system, the church, they held the cards. So when you see characters clashing in the novel, it's more than just personal, it reflects this larger fight for control.
Right, totally. And then you mentioned caciques earlier, these local leaders. Right?
Exactly, powerful figures. Sometimes they even had more sway than the Spanish officials, which is interesting to think about.
And what's strange is that Ibarra's father, Don Rafael, he's wealthy, but he's not considered one of them.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what really defined power back then? Was it just money? Or were there other things at play, social standing, connections? Who knows? Rizal leaves us thinking.
And speaking of leaving us thinking, that whole bit about the suicide in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
And those same woods now belong to Ibarra gave me chills, man. Do you think that's significant, or is Rizal messing with us?
It's hard to say with Rizal. He's always got these layers. But owning land then, it wasn't just about the money. It was tied to your identity, your family's history. And you've got to remember how Filipinos viewed their dead. Very different from the church's practices. So when Ibarra finds his dad's grave, well, let's just say, the gravedigger's attitude, it's like a violation. And not just of his father, but of something sacred to the community.
It's just, it makes you think about all these outward shows of faith, but then you see something like that, Padre Damaso and the grave, and it's just makes you question things,
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, who gets to decide what's right and wrong when it comes to faith? And then you've got Tassio.
Tassio, he's a real piece of work, that one.
The town lunatic, at least that's what they call him. But he's always got these really interesting observations about the church, about power, even questions things like purgatory, which is kind of a bold move back then, right?
Yeah, Tassio, he's like this walking contradiction to the status quo. He represents that clash between tradition and progress. He's got this reason, this logic that makes people uncomfortable, especially when you're talking about blind faith.
Right. And Rizal's brilliant for including him. It's like he's giving a voice to those who question things, those who see the hypocrisy. And I love that part where he's talking about lightning rods,
Oh, yeah, versus praying to St. Barbara.
Right. It's like science versus superstition. And it just makes you think about who has the power to decide which is valid, which is right,
And what happens to those who dare to challenge that power? Yeah, Rizal definitely makes you think about those things.
Yeah, and it's like every time Tassio talks, there's this storm brewing, both figuratively and literally, right? Like, his words have this power, this energy that disrupts everything, sort of like what Ibarra is going through, trying to deal with the injustice of it all. But it's not just Ibarra dealing with injustice in San Diego, is it? I mean, those poor sacristans, Basilio and Crispin.
Oh, their stories just heartbreaking. They're just kids. But they highlight this other side of things. The socioeconomic reality of life under Spanish rule.
It's like the system is designed to keep people like them down,
Sadly, it was for many Filipinos back then. Poverty, no education, barely any opportunities. It was like a cycle, almost impossible to break free.
And then there's Sisa, their mother, that scene where she's trying to make them a decent meal.
And I know, it's so hard to read.
It just gets to you. She's trying so hard, and it's like everything is working against her.
Right. You see the weight of their poverty, the constant struggle just to survive. It's like strips away any sense of dignity. And then her husband.
Don't even get me started on him. The gambling, I mean, come on. Like, they don't have enough problems already.
It's like every system, every structure in their lives, it's all designed to keep them trapped. It really makes you think about how colonialism impacted everyday Filipinos. And then you have Basilio's dream.
So disturbing. It's like, is it a nightmare, a premonition, or just what it's like to grow up with that constant fear.
It's definitely a powerful image. The violence, the fear. It makes you wonder what that kind of oppression does to a child, especially when it's coming from the very place that's supposed to offer safety and solace.
It's heavy stuff, like even the church, this place that's supposed to be safe, it's not free from the cruelty. And that makes me think of the title Noli me tangere, which means
Touch me not.
right, touch me not. Who's saying that, do you think? And who are they saying it to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, it's open to interpretation, right? But when I read it, I hear the voices of those who are suffering, the oppressed. It's like this "please see me, acknowledge my pain."
Yeah, like a warning almost.
It is a warning.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways, right? It's saying don't underestimate the pain you're causing, but also don't underestimate our strength, our ability to resist.
It's powerful how Rysel does that. Makes you really confront it. Makes you think about what you would do.
Exactly. Are we just going to stand by and watch this suffering happen? Or do we have a responsibility to do something, to change the systems that allow this to happen? It's a question we all have to ask ourselves, even today. Though, Rysel does give us some hope in all this darkness, wouldn't you say?
I think so. It's subtle, but it's there. Like with Basilio, he still dreams of a better future. Especially that part where he sees himself working for Ibarra.
It's that little glimmer of possibility that keeps them going. And it makes you wonder, what if things had been different? What if they'd had a real chance?
Makes you think. But can Ibarra really change things? He's got the education, the ideals, but is that enough to overcome all the deeply rooted problems in San Diego?
It's the question, isn't it? Can one man, even with the best of intentions, really make a difference against tradition, against those in power who benefit from the way things are? Rysel doesn't make it easy for us.
That's for sure. He gives us these glimmers of hope, but in the end, we're left with more questions than answers.
That's what makes it such a powerful piece of literature. It stays with you long after you finish reading it. It makes you think, makes you question, keeps those wheels turning.
It really does. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for our deep dive into Noli me tangere. But even though we're wrapping up, I think we're left with this one really important question. What would you do if you were in Ibarra's shoes? Knowing what you know now about San Diego, about the injustices, the hypocrisy, the struggle for power, how would you change things? It's a question worth pondering because the themes in Noli me tangere, they still resonate today, don't they?
They absolutely do.
So until next time, keep those wheels turning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the world around you with a critical eye. Thanks for joining us.